podcast, three game developers drinking good air tea. My name is Rami Ismail. I'm your host.
And I'm Osama Dorias.
And I'm Fauzi Mesmar.
Fauzi, jump in.
Me, jump in immediately.
Go for it.
Without how you doing this week?
How are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Rami. Thanks for asking.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad to hear. Alhamdulillah.
No one asked me, but I'm doing well too. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I've been in a very Viking mood as of late. So I played a bunch of Valheim and I spoke about that last week. But after that, I failed to get a group together to play Valheim with me proper. Like our times didn't align or something. But I still felt like doing some Vikinging. So I started playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I missed that last year. I didn't play it when it came out, and I got it on the Xbox One X and started playing it. And I think the last Assassin's Creed I played before that was Odyssey, the one in Greece.
Right.
Yeah. So I haven't been too far away from the series, but I didn't finish Odyssey.
Odyssey was the one right before this one. I don't think you missed anything.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go. Then I am up to date.
It was very long, Odyssey. Yes. Like it started slow and it went very long. I've been told it was very good, but
I played maybe 10, 20 hours of Odyssey, and I just got distracted with other stuff when it came out. Right. I didn't play it much. And yeah, if it's still in this Viking mode, I was like, I want to, I can't go Valheiming, then I can go more to Valhalla, I guess, and start playing that. It's pretty good game, actually. I think it's from a start of a game kind of perspective. A lot of Assassin's Creed games kind of spend a lot of time building the world. Mm-hmm. But for the story, it takes a bit of a time to kind of ramp up.
Yeah. Remember Assassin's Creed 3, where it's just you play for 20 hours and then the logo appears and you're like, wait, what? Excuse me?
Yep, exactly. So you could tell the series has done a bit of that in the past. But this one, it has a very strong opening, I would say. The story starts off strong with a lot of conflict, interesting characters. So it kind of grabbed me from the beginning.
Do you think that part of that is because the culture we're referring to is so well known through the sort of the stereotype of the culture, right?
Yeah.
The character of the culture that they're building on is so well, because it's a question I always have with Assassin's Creed games. They reach to these cultures that are relatively unknown in sort of the Western pantheon of mythology. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they spend a lot of time establishing the world, establishing the characters. Well, with the Vikings, you can go pretty hard, pretty fast because everybody kind of has an agreement.
Yeah, you're right, and they do a bunch of that already. At some point, it's there's Odin, and we talked about Odin for some reason, and they don't have to do a lot of that character establishment there because everybody's so familiar with Norse mythology, or at least have an idea to get you started. So yeah, there's a lot less exposition into what the world is all about as the game starts, which I quite enjoy.
I think that's always my favorite thing about Assassin's Creed is this weird sense of history that it has, because obviously they want to stay historical, but at the same time they also want to imply that everything that's happening is because of our protagonist.
Yeah. But that's actually part of the lore of the game.
That's part of the charm, right?
Part of
exactly.
The charm.
But it's really part of the lore itself, is that the Assassins and the Templars have been manipulating history throughout time. So for them, this is really a strong narrative device.
Yeah. What I did notice is that I thought that was interesting. After playing Valheim and then now immediately jumping into Assassin's Creed, the open world in Assassin's Creed now, when I can't interact with a lot of the elements in the environment to use for my use, made me stop. And I'll give you an example.
Right.
In Valheim, as I walk through the world, there's a rock, there's a tree, there's things. Whatever is in that world is there for a purpose that I can use gameplay-wise.
Right.
And it's made me stop and think and go, open world design as we know it, and even with Zelda and Breath of the Wild kind of moved it to that point in which the world on its own, it can't be just an aesthetic that you traverse anymore. It needs to serve you gameplay-wise too.
Right. I mean, I think we've seen that too with Immortal Phoenix, right? A very, very distilled world. But you also saw sort of the opposite criticism there, that the world was too dense and too constrained. It's fun to see these developments. I will say, as a designer, I've been looking at Assassin's Creed specifically sort of reckon with and that system of open world movement evolves from like pacing to gameplay back to pace. Because I don't want to go back to Dragon Age Inquisition either, where like for 90% of the game I was obsessed with collecting every herb.
Yeah, I think it's not. I'm not specifically focusing on the collection aspect of this, but I think it's more
The
like how
function.
exactly how the world in its own is a system
Right.
that aids you from a gameplay perspective.
Would you think that simulation is becoming a bigger? Because I think that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about we want deeper simulation of our worlds and systems. I think it's a conversation that keeps coming up at the moment. Like people talking about like making sure that our worlds react in ways and are useful in ways that help a sort of abstract system.
Yeah. I think that the simulation of the worlds and all of this is basically moving games from, like you're just strapped in for the ride, and more like I can be part of that world, and my actions have a big impact on the systems of that world, and that in turn aids me in my journey. It creates like a more personal experience as you're going through those games.
Right.
Those
we can tell stories of having 100 Flintwoods and no ravens.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating. The open world discussion is one of my favorite at the moment. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
It is.
Going through 2 games like that in a row, I think makes me want to stop and just think about open world design in different ways and go like, oh, if Assassin's Creed was to go in a different direction, where would that go?
Actually, I played some Valheim as well. Last week, I told you that I had bought it and didn't have a chance to play it. So I jumped in and I started playing it the wrong way initially. But I just started playing it alone. My plan was to go through the tutorial and then eventually, grab a group of friends who maybe already played it and try to join the server or invite them to mine. And I ended up spending hours just like playing alone. And the game, I mean, systemically it works well, but I guess there wasn't a lot of fun to be had alone. There was a little bit of discoverability, but that was it. Then I noticed that my sister had bought the game as well. So I poked her and I'm like, hey, you want to play? And then my brothers jumped in, and it ended up being a 5-person family setting. Like me, my sister, and my 3 brothers. My brothers jumped in. They bought the game outright because me and my sister were playing. And that changed the game completely. Just that
was a perfect setting to play a game.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Except like while we played it 4 hours, for several hours, and we hit this. Oh, I see. So we did everything that we could do without grinding, and now I guess we have to like go out in the world and grind a bit. So I think it's one of those really cool games where you could play while having a chat with people while doing the grindy thing. And there's definitely a place for that. But I'm not a collector. Like we were talking about open world and collecting before. My player type is not collector. There are a lot of things that I like about games. Collections is not really one of them. I don't get a rush from checking a box because I have 100 of these things or because I made it to that as much as I am an explorer. And there's some exploration there for me, but it feels gated by collecting, if that makes sense. Right? So like I ventured into a direction and I encountered a very difficult enemy. He wrecked me. It took me a lot of effort to go and recover my items, and I realized, okay, I just don't have there's not Dark Souls. There's not about the skill of defeating this enemy. I really don't have the stats to defeat this enemy. So I would block with my shield, and damage would go through. I'm like, okay, I need a much better shield to be able to withstand that attack, that kind of thing. So it's good. I'm going to play it more and come back and let you know how that evolved. But I've hit this wall where I'm like, okay, now I got to do the part that I like less about games to try to get more out of this. Does that make sense to you, Fauzi?
Very, very similar. Like I had to the point that like when I can't get the group together, like I said, I don't see the point of playing it anymore, which is why I played a different game entirely this week.
Yeah.
And if I had my Habibis online and we're talking, it's a lot. It becomes a lot less monotonous than just me, just going through the motions myself.
Another game I played actually is completely not a Viking thing, unless maybe they have some Viking
The
aesthetic.
first non-Viking game of this show.
Exactly. We played Sackboy Adventures, and I played it with my daughter. She's 7 years old, and we loved it. I absolutely love that game. It's a lot of fun. I've played every Little Big Planet beforehand, including the Little Big Planet racing game that let you build your own tracks. So I am a fan of the franchise, and so there's some bias there. It really became more of an action game. I bought it when the game first came out and played it very little bit. We got the consoles had just come out and we had a whole bunch of games, so I just like sampled it a little. But this time it was intentional. We like sat down, okay, let's beat this game. We didn't beat it yet. We're like halfway through, and I'm loving it so far. The narrative is great. Visually, it's stunning. Highly recommended if you want to play it in co-op. I haven't played it alone, so I can't speak to that. But otherwise, I'm loving it.
This one is Sumo Digital, right? Not Media Molecule.
That's right. It is Sumo Digital.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They make good games. They made the Crash Bandicoot racing game too, as well.
Oh,
right.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen some shifts at Sony lately. I heard they're winding down Japan studios, or like focusing it into the Astro. I mean, I love the Astro game, so but still, Japan Studio is sort of an iconic brand.
It's a landmark studio, man. That they're responsible for some of my favorite games.
If Sony kind of keeps pushing their IPs through interesting studios for new versions, that could be interesting.
I would like to see more Sony first-party studios in Japan, actually.
Right. I mean, I would love that too. But in the way we're seeing the industry evolve with Stadia now, with Sony, with everybody, even Nintendo at this point, it's just the risk of spinning up studios to do experimental work just seems too high. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I see a lot of them go like somebody else work with this IP, right? Like Zelda, even with indies now.
Yeah.
Sackboy going through Sumo, and if I may use this as a bridge to the game I'm playing. Mm-hmm. Persona 5 Strikers also being an interesting experiment.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So this one's made by Tecmo, isn't it?
Right.
That's interesting.
Persona 5 Strikers sort of continues a weird tradition of, we have an IP that is absolutely not a hack and slash action game or even a Musou game, and we're going to make it one. And the thing is, I love Persona 5. I love the characters, I love the story, I love the world, and I love the mechanics. I love the interface and the loudness of it. The thing about Strikers is I was really nervous about that game because I love Joker and Ryuji and Anne and like the entire crew. I love the Phantom Thieves and Morgana and like everything about that world. So going back to it was scary because what if they mess it up, mm-hmm. right? What if my memory of Persona 5 will forever be worse for having played Strikers? And just from the very first moment, it's just like, you're back in the world. Wow. They nail the crew, they nail the aesthetic, they nail the interface, even though it's a completely different type of game.
What type of game is it?
So it's a hack and slash action. It's not quite big enough to say like it's similar to a Dynasty Warriors game, right? Mm-hmm. They're relatively small encounters with maybe 20 to 100 enemies usually. And you kind of hack and slash your way through. You have a weak attack, a strong attack. You can switch between different characters. You bring a party of 4. Each of the characters has their own unique style of fighting with square and triangle. But then if you hold one of the triggers or the bumpers, it switches to a Persona style interface where you get to pick an attack and aim it at an enemy.
Does it like pause time?
It pauses time. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
You also get to aim with guns, just like you did in Persona 5, and that slows down time or stops time depending on the weapon you're using. So in the end, it ends up feeling exactly like Persona 5. Like you're still aiming to hit enemies with their weakness so that you can do an all-out follow-up attack. And the story still develops the same way, even down to having a calendar that forwards through morning, noon, night, and the different dates. It's just that the calendar and the social aspects are far less prominent. But it feels so genuine. It feels so accurate that, yeah, it's building on top of my memories of Persona 5, which is
Persona 5
incredible.
Is such a wonderful game. That was like you're saying that your mom played it as her first game. That is definitely the game. Like if somebody told me I've never played a JRPG before, Persona 5 would be the first one I'd recommend. And though, like, I am biased. I've worked on the series before. I worked on I worked on a bit of the third one for the PlayStation Portable.
Right. Nice.
10 years ago, and the thing that I like the most about that is that, like, that team, like with Hoshino Sensei, like, they've been making Persona games since the 90s, and it's the same crew that is still making Persona games. No, Masaru-san that writes the soundtrack is still writing the soundtrack, and, like, they will add value to even, like, the spin-offs. Like when Persona 3 came out on the PS2, it was huge. There was, like, movies and animes and manga adaptations and stuff like that, and we were doing the PlayStation Portable aspect of it. Like Meguro-san, I think, wrote 10 extra tracks for just the PSP version of that. Wow. Yeah, it's a talented team, and I'm just happy that there's build on with Persona 5 Strikers. I can't wait till I play it.
Right. No, it's super good. It's genuinely a wonderful game.
Yeah, I saw that Soejima-san, the art director, is involved in both.
Right. I cannot be surprised. It breathes the same. It's hard to it's genuinely hard to say at this point which one. It becomes a really difficult conversation because nobody is wrong, nobody is right. I believe Persona 5 is the better game, but if somebody else said, like, oh no, Strikers is like a better distillation of what Persona is about, the rebelliousness or something, I'd be like, yeah, that's right. It's like talking about, like, who makes the better I don't know, the better recipe. In Arab.
We've already established that Iraqis make the best kebabs.
Oh, yeah, I will fight you.
Don't trigger Osama. Because Osama will trigger us.
Right. I mean, let's be fair. I do think that is sort of, like, inherent to the culture, right? Oh, like there is a definite pride in Arab culture of things that are your own, or your own countries, or your own cities. I think honestly, I think on every level we try to outdo each other, or at least say that we outdo each other.
Dude, like, something that I find so funny when I talk to anyone in the Middle East, like, they ask you how you're doing. You tell them, I feel bad. They'd be like, you feel bad. I feel worse. It's like, how's competition? Why are we suddenly talking about you?
Right.
Like, you're one-upping feeling worse than I do?
But it goes for everything, right? You go, like, you tell somebody, like, oh, I wrecked my car, and they go, like, oh, in 1978 I wrecked my car real bad. And it's like, Dad, listen.
It's anything like that. Like, I see the conversations on social media. We just landed a car on Mars and it's taking photos. Photos? Let me show you these photos I took. It's literally a car on Mars.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Like, actually, my most vivid memory of this was not too long ago when my mother, this is like maybe 4 years ago or something like that, my mother was sitting with a lot of her friends. The context was like someone's wedding or someone's engagement, something along those lines. And in front of, like, while I was there, she told all her friends that I was an engineer. And she said that because someone else was saying, oh, my son's an engineer. She's like, well, my son's an engineer. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not an engineer. Like,
I work in the world of animation.
Exactly.
And she, like, that to her, she had to, like, come in with at least the same. She can't come in with less. And what's a designer, right?
Oh, yeah, it's true. I mean, but it's also funny because it gets used in all sorts of directions, right?
Yeah.
So when because there's layers to this, right? When it's you against somebody from a different country, you defend your country.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But when it's two people from the same country, you defend your city.
Yes.
And when it's two people from the same city, you defend your neighborhood.
Yes.
And when it's people from the same neighborhood, you defend your street in the neighborhood. And then if it's in the street, you defend your family from the other family. But when it's in the family, you give the people towards the other people, right? Because we will always defend anybody. The closer you get to our family, the more defensive we get, right?
Absolutely.
But within the family, we don't do that at all.
No, why would you do that?
Within the family, we let people know that all the other people are better, and we need to step it up. Which is really, like, it's such a weird contradiction. I actually, a great example. My dad listens to the Habibis, And remember the episode we did about food?
Yes.
And Fauzi said, and when you eat kushari, there's a kamala, right?
Yeah.
Like a continuation. And my dad's like, Rami, I thought I raised you better. Why is Fauzi the person bringing that up, huh? He's not an Egyptian. He's telling the Egyptian stories. I was like, Dad, listen, I'm having fun on a podcast. He brought it up first, okay? Like, what am I supposed to do?
It's clearly that I am the authority to talk about food. It's not Osama by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I mean, it's not Osama because from his kebab opinion.
Blasphemy, actually. Correction.
Well, when one day you come to Montreal, I'll take you to the best Iraqi kebab restaurant you've ever had. Since I don't
I'll
imagine.
definitely take you up on that.
Best Iraqi kebab, I can believe. Best kebab.
Yes, exactly. No, exactly. Be careful with your choice of words there. So.
Just hold off until you tried it. You'll see. It's authentic, like you wouldn't believe. You'll love it.
But there is something really interesting about that layering of what we defend, right? It's always us until we get to the final layer, and then it's sort of like outwards as well. I've always been fascinated by it because it's true. Every story you tell, an Arab will tell a bigger story, and it's very often you wonder whether it's true, right?
Yeah. This one-upmanship actually put food on our table, if I think about it, because when we first came to Canada, my dad was a petroleum engineer in Iraq, but when we first came to Canada, he opened up a store with one of his friends, and then they each, they were partners at the store, and then they each opened up their own store, and then a second store, and then a third store. I think they were competing to see who could open the most stores. So I actually had to credit it to that.
There is this thing, like when you speak to any older generation Arab, that they will totally one-up you on anything you say about like how much more difficult their life was.
Right.
Like I don't think there is a single Arab man over 40 that has studied in the same school that in the same village that they lived in. Everybody apparently traveled thousands of miles to go to school.
At least 1,000 miles.
And like the bus comes and takes you. I had to walk 5 villages to get to my school. They're like, oh, you have an electricity at your home? I used to read over candles.
Right.
My father was a captain of the wrestling team in his school, but apparently so are all my uncles.
Right.
I don't know how they pulled that off.
But it's so true, and it's so funny that these stories, when they come up, they're almost mythological, right? They turn your parents into this mythological creatures, your aunties and uncles, and then you're just like, yeah, no, I had a rough day, and one of them would just go like, rough day. What do you mean rough day? When I grew up, rough day meant we didn't eat for 6 weeks. There was no water within 5,000 miles. A meteor came from the sky and we punched it back up. Right.
Like the worst thing is like when they go you're at I was with my family having lunch or something, and then my mom's like, would you like some more meat in your plate? And then I say no. My dad just loses it.
Lost it.
What?
Right.
No meat? What do you mean no meat? When I was growing up, I was dreaming of meat. I was like, oh, that
we would have meat once a month, and we would have to walk 6 villages for it, and share it with 12 children, and we would get one bite of meat, and we would be thankful and happy. And you say no to meat,
and it wasn't even Iraqi kebab; it was just like regular meat.
He gets so insulted just because, like, no, I don't want that much meat. I'm happy with just rice. Just rice? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I love
we have the same stories. How is that possible?
I think this is just a very cultural way of telling stories, because I'm imagining that his parents did the same with him, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you gotta remember, I think in a lot of cases, the generation before, and I mean, not to discredit the difficulties that the generation of my father went through, but the generation before that probably had really rough lives, right? We're talking about colonialism, horrible things that have happened, wars, independence, stuff like that. So, right, even in the Netherlands, there was no sewage, roads didn't exist, stuff like that. On a 100-year scale, you're in a different age of humanity. So imagining that in Egypt, of course life was different and was harder, but I think the Arabs have a very unique ability to take from that a story that one-ups
it's
anybody else. That's it, right? That's the only thing.
I genuinely believe it's genetic. So like if this podcast was my dad, your dad, and Osama's dad is gonna go like, kebabs come from Iraq. Everybody knows that. He will also do that.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt about it.
That's why you need somebody to kind of be the judge of who's right instead of just these outrageous claims.
I think that is kind of the interesting thing about this is there is no judgment in the one-upment between friends, right? Like you say kebab from Iraq is better. We all know that's nonsense.
Yes.
But we still,
everyone that's listening also knows that's nonsense.
No. But shots fired.
We all sort of accept that is what you believe and that is fair. And that,
we accept you, Osama.
I think okay. We'll leave your wrong opinions about Iraqi kebab aside for a second. I think there's actually good intentions behind it. Even if it's, I mean, if someone's praising themselves a lot and you try to one up them, you're trying to humble that person so that they don't, they get a little bit grounded. And if somebody's trying to go the other way and say, look, I had a bad day, you're trying to make them feel better by showing them that it could be worse. I really do believe that at some point it was well-intentioned. It's to make the situation better or to show a point. And then it became cultural and that message got lost somewhere.
Right. And I still think it's well-intended, but it's also just automatic.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, and obviously, it will always come back to food, right? Like that's what our people fight about, I think. It's food.
One of many things.
One of many things, that is fair. So, a few episodes ago, we were talking about food, and we were talking about where the best of any food comes from. And at one point, I forgot who it was, but one of us said, we need a fair Egyptian judge of food. A neutral Egyptian judge. Yeah. And,
I said neutral, you said Egyptian.
Well, I mean, the same thing, right? Same thing. So we went and found somebody who could do that. And with that, I think we want to introduce our first ever guest to the Habibis, Nourhan.
Hey, I'm the fair, neutral Egyptian judge, apparently. I don't know where you got that from.
I mean, I wasn't looking for neutral. I was just looking for Egyptian, to be fair.
Because Rami is the one that added a bunch of stuff. Yeah, exactly. The fair and the neutral, those are additions.
I'm still reserving judgment until you hear your opinion about Iraqi kebab. I'm just putting it out there.
Honestly, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I have very specific food opinions, and I do think Iraqi kebabs are better.
Thank you. Okay, that's it.
But listen to this other opinion. I also think Yemeni and Omani food is probably the best food in the region. So
you know what? I'll accept that as long as you agree with the kebab part. You can take the rest.
I just really like that Nourhan specifically mentioned all countries that aren't ours. Just to start it off, she's gonna one up every opinion.
I have listen, this is you guys were talking about competition. I have to do it. I'm Arab. I literally go through this. And even when I cook, there's going to be like my mom, I was making Besbousa, right? I was making it for the first time ever. And I was really nervous. And my mom looked at it and she was like, I had this friend 25 years ago who made the best Besbousa ever. And I was like, cool. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to forget this moment happened. And I put the Besbousa in the oven and I was so excited for it. And my mom was like, she was like she smelled everything. She was like, no, this isn't it. This isn't as good. And I was like, oh my God. Can you text her right now and ask her if it's good or not? And I took out the Besbousa. It smelled so good. I did a food. I took the pictures of it, and she sends it. And this lady's like, "Yeah, it's not good as mine. I will fight you."
Right. I also love that this is you said the first time you made Besbousa.
I know, it was the first time ever. The lady, I got looped into the WhatsApp conversations, and I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
And I'm like, I will fight all of you to defend my Besbousa. None of you get to eat this. And I was like, Mama, you can't try it unless you defend my honor. I'm being attacked right now. and like it was like Arabs, man.
It was. It's a thing for sure. We came across you from the many photos you post all over of food.
Oh yeah.
And I've been following all your recipe exploits and food exploits ever since. To be fair, coming across your social media accounts for me was like, it felt like coming home to, home.
That's so nice.
Food is one of the pillars, I think, of Arab culture and society. And I think you did a fatir.
Yes, I did do ftir. Fatir is like one of those things where I make I'll make them once a month. I'll make 4 at a time and freeze them and take them out, and it's just one of the best things ever because when you take it out, it smells like of the oven. It smells like it smells like Egypt. It smells like Masr. It smells like home. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah. It was as a child when I was younger in Egypt. It was the McDonald's for me, right? Where your parents would take you for nice food.
Rami, how the hell do you get it? Do you get us back to McDonald's every time we talk about food here?
Because I like McNuggets.
Yeah, it's the McNugget. You have a McNugget issue.
Yeah, I have a
it helps us appreciate real food, right, Rami? Right. That's your intention all along.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to one up you with like the best nuggets in the world.
Honestly, I'm going to be honest. The best McDonald's I've ever had is in Masr. In Egypt, they have like this thing called like a spicy chicken Big Mac. It's the best thing ever. It's like a Big Mac, but with the chicken patties, and it's the best thing I ever had. Whenever anyone comes from Egypt, I'll have them get like 5 with them in the suitcase.
Right.
And like it doesn't go bad, obviously, and it's just the best thing ever.
The customs officers must be so confused. It's like, what is this? It's like the burgers for a friend.
They have McDonald's packaging. Is that correct, madam? It's like yes.
Yes.
That is correct.
No.
With all the preservatives, it'll probably last a while too.
Right.
I like that Nourhan just one up 2 stories of you in one go. She's
right.
like, you're like, best McDonald's in North. She's like, obviously mine is better. And like, you're like, I like McDonald's, like my story. Let me tell you this better McDonald's story.
As far as I'm concerned, she said Egypt, I'm good. I agree wholeheartedly with everything what Nourhan just said. I've never had the burger, but I know it's the best.
See, I have no regrets because she said the Iraqi kebabs are the best kebabs. I'm really happy with having you over on this on our podcast, Nourhan. This has been a great decision.
Nourhan, you gotta throw me a bone here.
My job here is to just get everybody on my side, and then I'm just gonna quickly take down all your arguments. And I feel like,
no.
Like I feel like you don't know what you did, but I'm here now, and it's gonna be so much fun.
So as our resident food expert, what can you throw to Fawzi? What do the Jordanians have?
Mansef.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, good. All right, so that's good, Fawzi. You have your thing. Yeah, Mansef. The Egyptians have best McDonald's and Osama.
I feel like, okay. I actually have a funny story about Mansef.
Okay.
So in Egypt, we don't eat mansef. I had no idea what it was. And the first time I went over to my fiance's house, his mom made us mansef, right? And I had no idea what this was. It was my first contact with it. And I looked down and I was like, oh my God, this is like white feta. Like how feta in Egypt is red. And I was like, oh, it's white. And this woman looked at me and she looked at my fiance and she was like, you want to marry her? I was like, what did I do? And he was like, that's not what it's called.
You don't insult the mansef in a Jordanian household.
I know, I had no idea. They're Palestinian. They just lived in Jordan. And I was like, I have no idea what this is. And I loved it so much. And we make mansef now for like all the really big celebrations we have.
Nice.
So I love it. I think it's the best. I do not think it's better than Egyptian feta, to be honest with you.
Oh, no. Oh my God. What is happening?
That's a jagged bone you throw.
But
That's
maybe
that's
I
a very
should be
pointy
comparing
bone
them.
that hit me in the heart.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's too bad.
Are you? Are you?
Are you really?
No, I'm not.
Well,
So we're gonna throw the Jordanians the men stuff, but it's not as good as ours. But that's what we're gonna give them. I love it.
that's like a backhanded compliment I've ever heard of. But what I'm gonna do is gonna take this audio clip and send it to your mother-in-law.
You would end me.
You said you said you made Besbousa, right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what Besbousa is?
So it's the best way I can describe it is it's like a very moist coconut farina cake. It's crumbly. It'll like it's supposed to melt in your mouth with like a nice hot cup of tea. I can't imagine eating basbousa without a cup of tea. And the process is, I think the process is going to differ for everyone, but
But yours is
so
the best.
I do think mine is the best.
Good.
Of course you do.
I mean, obviously, but I feel like everyone uses it with different ingredients, right? Like some people use semolina, I used farina. Some people will use like butter, normal butter. I used ghee because here's my thing.
Mhm.
I think clarified butter or ghee is actually better because it adds so much flavor to it. And especially with this, you're not adding vanilla extract, you're not adding anything to it. It's basically like butter and like whatever sort of ground thing you're going to be using. So I feel like it adds so much flavor, and I think the thing is with Egyptian food because basbousa is Egyptian, huh?
So what?
That's debatable.
No.
So that you debate, Osama. Of course you debate that.
I think like with Egyptian food, butter holds a very special place in it. Like everything we made with my grandma was just filled with butter. Everything, even
Mhm.
if it didn't need it. Like like I remember, like I don't know if you remember, Romy, or if you have this in other countries, like you'd buy the clarified butter, but it would be like a big butter ball, and you just like
Mhm.
cut pieces of it. That's what we had. Like I can't imagine growing up without that. So I used
Yeah.
the clarified butter as my flavoring, and I did one twist, just one twist. I added cardamom and orange to it just to give it like a little extra pull, and that was really controversial. But you can't yell at me here. That was
Look at
very
all the hot takes here.
controversial in the group chat. And then so when you mix it, you're gonna sometimes you just need to do things in a very, very old fashioned way. Like you're gonna add in your farina, you're gonna add in your butter, a little bit of baking powder, and then you're just gonna like mix it together with your hands. Like with your hands. It's not gonna work if you do it with a whisk. It's not gonna do it. It's not gonna work if you do it with anything other than your hands because you want that nice, flaky,
Mhm.
beautiful like texture, and you're not going to get that with any sort of machine.
Yeah.
You're just not, right? So I think like that's what makes cooking so sacred, especially in the context of the Arab world, is that sometimes you just have to do things the way they've been done for centuries, and no amount of modern baking techniques is
Right.
going to change that, because when you make food you're also like putting a part of yourself in it. So like you just have to like break it down with your hands, and then you shape it into however you want. And
I can hear my tata speak right now. Just like, you think a KitchenAid is as good as centuries of our culture? No. Throw the
no,
KitchenAid out of here. Get it out of here.
like I'll use my KitchenAid with like making dough, but I
Right.
can't, like I feel like ethically and morally like I just can't use it for anything else.
The only thing I wanted to add is for the people who are going to, like listen to this and want to try basbousa for the first time. If it's prepackaged, it is not the same at all.
Mhm.
It's going to be dry. You're not going to get that moisture at all, and don't judge it based on that at all. It's not the same dessert.
I would love
yeah.
some with my tea right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Same.
Oh yeah.
Wait, Nourhan, we call it, I think, harissa in Jordan. What do you top it with? Is it pistachio or something else?
So I topped it off with pistachio because I like pistachio, but in Masr we usually top it off with with hazelnuts.
Right.
Yeah,
But
same.
I don't like
Hazelnut for us.
Right.
I just like pistachios.
Mm-hmm.
The dough is gonna feel like wet sand, and that's the texture you want. That's the best texture for besbousa, in my opinion. You can make it wetter or drier. I thought that was perfect for me. And then you're going to I used a circular pan, like a 9-inch one, and I just threw it all in there and I patted it down with my hand. Like I shaped it with my hand. And like you have to pat it down really well or else it won't hold together. It just won't work. And then you can cut it however you want. Originally I was just going to cut it in squares, but I did it in like little diamond shapes. And I kid you not, that was one of the most frustrating things I've done in my life. And baking it is also interesting because the ovens that you would normally make it in just aren't here in America. I'm in North America. They're not here. So baking it is a very intricate process because if you over bake it, you can't eat it. It's going to be a cracker, and if you under bake it, it's going to be sand in your mouth. So the way I did it, I put it like on the middle rack for about 15 minutes until I saw it brown on the side. And then I took it out, let it rest for 1 minute, and I put it back in the oven, but on the very top rack. And then once it started to get a little bit brown, I got really impatient and I just boiled it. I was like, I can't wait. Like, I have the pressure of my mom, I have the pressure of her friend. Everything's just too much pressure right now.
Right.
So I boiled it until it turned like a nice, beautiful golden brown. And then like immediately once you take it out, you have to have your syrup ready. It's so easy to make. It's just 2 cups of water and 1 cup of sugar and lemon, and you just let it all boil up, right? So it's just the quickest thing you can make while it's baking. And then here's the thing. I would heavily recommend that if you do make besbousa, you make the simple syrup the night before and you refrigerate it. Because the combination of cold simple syrup, or at least room temperature simple syrup, with like a flaming hot besbousa is just going to mix together so well. It's going to create a texture that is like very hard on the outside of the besbousa, and then in the middle it's going to be like nice and moist and chewy. And it's the most beautiful texture. It adds so much fragrance. And I feel like when I think of besbousa and making it, I think just like its textures, its layers of fragrance, it melts in your mouth. And that was just the most amazing experience. And I do think I have every single right to just fight those. It was so good.
I'm just so happy that you know we have this beautiful like build on culture, on heritage, on history, like all this effort that you did, and then the result is like my friend made it better.
Oh no!
Thanks, mom. Thanks, mom.
20 years ago.
But no, I was like, no, this is like you have to. When you break it down, I think it can also be like very toxic sometimes. Like with food, it's just all fun and games, but then at one point you just start like pitting people against each other, and then you'll. Like it's not like I got accepted into graduate school finally.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And like my mom called everyone. She's like, "Oh, my daughter got accepted into graduate school," and they all started this thing where it was just like competition. And I was like, listen, I know all your kids. I know all their dirty little secrets. Don't make me feel it in this group chat right now. Stop it. Like, ma'am, like one of them was like, oh yeah, my son is going to graduate school too. I'm like, ma'am, your son isn't in college.
Yeah, I wish. Sometimes I wish they would just keep it at Mabruk. Congratulations. And
oh no,
but no,
no, I want the drama.
Yeah.
Drama. Why do you fight me about mindset? Fight me about
Fauzi, You do remember our food expert here has said that Mensev is indeed the best Mensev there is. It's just not as good as white feta.
Yeah,
which is like a mid-tier Egyptian food, right?
You're digging your own grave here, Ronnie. I don't know.
We just lost half our followers.
We lost followers and gained enemies.
You know what? That's the only way to do it, though. Like, I feel like that's like, and you know what? We'd probably gain enemies, and we'd probably still be eating together.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting. Like the idea that, like a lot of the times we'll not agree on a lot of things, but I think food is like this wonderful mediator, where it's like you know, like in Egypt we say like you're breaking bread and salt together.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that manifests in a lot of ways.
Right.
Like I'll still like invite Fauzi over to eat. Don't make me do that.
Let's agree to this. When the world goes back to being able to travel, we'll all meet and we'll all bring the best food of our culture.
Love it.
Which will be so much easier for me because Nourhan is coming, so we're good.
Yes, and I'll get to judge all of it.
Right.
Do I have to make it? Because it won't be the best if I make the kebabs myself.
You have to make it. You can't talk all this talk and then
not make it yourself.
Oh no, I have to practice.
Yeah, you have to practice.
You have the pandemic to practice, man. Just make kebabs every day. That'll be fun.
So, like full truth, my brother-in-law makes the best kebabs.
Well, time to go.
Here we go.
Time to go tell him, and then he'll teach you. And then when you make it the first time, he'll tell you it's not as good as his.
That's the process.
That's how it works. Anyway, Nourhan, thank you so much for the chats and the Besbousa recipe.
Yeah.
Do I understand correctly that you have it written out?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Would you be okay with posting it in our Discord?
I can post it in the Discord with the pictures.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So for everybody listening in on our Discord, there's a recipe channel that Nourhan will be posting the Besbousa recipe. And if you've been listening along and you're not quite sure what it is or what it looks like when it's done, there will be some beautiful diamond-shaped photos of those. For everybody that tuned in, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed, if you're listening via the browser, don't forget to hit that subscribe button at whatever your favorite podcasting app is. If you have any questions, if you have any stories, if you have recipes of your own, please do email them to us at info@thehabibis.com, and we will tell you how our recipes are better. If you want to hang out with a bunch of listeners, friends, followers, everything, follow us, join us at our Discord at discord.thehabibis.com. And finally, if you want to follow us on Twitter, follow us at @the_Habibis. I think that was it for this episode. Nourhan, again, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
This was the Habibis podcast for this episode. I was Rami Ismail, your host. Thanks for being here, and salam.
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 That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I was Rami Ismail, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at @THA_Rami. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Fauzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fauzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. The intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubaila, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and salam.